Literally 10 minutes before we hit record on this podcast, Kevin McCullar made the announcement that he is going to be returning to Kansas for his second year with the Jayhawks and what I believe is like his 17th year in college. I can't keep track of how old these kids and how long they stay in school anymore. But that means that we are now looking at a situation, T.O., where Kansas and Bill Self are going to roll out a lineup with DeJuan Harris at the point, Nick Timberlake, the Towson transfer, at the 2, Kevin McCullar at the 3, KJ Adams at the 4, and the big homie Hunter Dickinson at the 5. Tell me why you have anyone other than Kansas at number 1. They got to be it at this point, right?
They got to be one of two, and Duke's going to be the other one. But I'll be honest, right now, as it stands, I'm going Kansas number 1 for no other reason than fit. I mean, look at these guys. They've done it before. KJ Adams was a small part of the national championship team. DeJuan Harris is really, really good. He was a starter on that national championship team. And then you add Timberlake, who can really shoot the basketball, McCullar, who's one of the best defensive players in the country. And then you go to Hunter Dickinson, who fits Bill Self like a glove, who finally gets to get paid after making, what, 50 grand at Michigan?
For the record, I don't buy that.
Iffy.
I don't buy that.
I'm not sure I buy that either. But that all being said, I mean, when it comes to coaching style and player, Hunter Dickinson fits that to a T. Their roster is really good. They've done it before, and now you add a weapon with skill at the 5, something that even though Bill Self's had huge dudes at the 5 position, he's never really had quality skill at the 5 position. Hunter Dickinson, size plus skill, means trouble for the Big 12. I think I have to go with Kansas.
So I'm in agreement on everything that you just said, and I would vote Kansas too. And I also think with Kevin McCullar, not only are you talking about a defensive player.
Focus Kansas 2, T-O-O or T-W-O?
T-O-O, as in
okay.
I would place number 1.
I was doing the same kind of mental math there, T. I was like, wait, what did he just say?
You. I agree. I agree with you on them being number 1, and I think they should get voted as number 1 right now. And by the way, with McCullar, the switchability defensively, the way that he can dictate a game on that end of the floor, not to mention he averaged 11, 7, and close to 3 assists per game.
Yep.
Kevin McCullar sort of flies under the radar, but I'll tell you what, guys, that guy is a Swiss Army knife and one of the better players you're going to find in the sport. I will play devil's advocate and be different. The reason why Duke can be argued as number 1 is that, in my opinion, if the last month of the season, Tyrese Proctor carries right into this upcoming season and takes it up a notch, which I expect him to, if not a couple, the idea of Proctor and Jeremy Roach together, bringing out the best in one another. And then in that front court, the fact that you can have Mark Mitchell and Kyle Filipowski and the freshman class that they have, like, they've got such a great blend and have had just about as much, not nearly as much because of the fact that Dickinson comes into Kansas and now you get this return news. But the fact is, Duke's got the blend that people sometimes will criticize them for. Oh, they're just so young. Oh, it's going to take them time. This Duke team, guys, in November should be great. And based on the way that the talent grew in 1 year and in maybe the last 2 months of the season, some of these guys, the way that they broke out of their shells, and then Kyle Filipowski's just so steady. I love the kid. I think the fact that he did what he did as a freshman is scary for his sophomore year. But, man, Rob and T.O., I fell in love with Proctor late in the year. I just thought he was fantastic come March and the way that he played. And if Jeremy Roach can stay healthy, that backcourt duo, to me, with what they have, with Jared McCain coming in as well, that's where I wonder, okay, could Duke have a higher ceiling perhaps? Because these guys, the second-year guys, are probably only going to go in one direction, not to mention a freshman class that carries a ton of buzz. It's a matter of just how great will they be. They don't have a ton of pressure on them because you're going to have 4 starters back.
Yep.
Yeah. So my biggest thing with Kansas is, do we trust the shooting enough, right? Timberlake is going to knock them down, right?
Yes.
DeJuan Harris shot 41% from three last season. But he was a guy that shot that number because a lot of defenses just kind of said, hey, look, you know what? We're going to dare you to shoot. And he had games where he hit 5 of them, and he had games where he hit none of them. Hunter Dickinson shot 40-something% from three. I don't know if you would necessarily qualify him as a shooter, and using him as a floor spacer kind of completely nullifies what makes him so valuable in that offense. KJ Adams, not a guy you got to guard on the perimeter. Kevin McCullar, throughout his career, has not been a guy that you need to guard on the perimeter. So that is my biggest question, is like you basically have one dude that you have to chase off the three-point line when you're trying to throw the ball into Hunter Dickinson. That would be my one big question mark. But that's also just kind of like I'm nitpicking a little bit, right? And I don't think that it necessarily matters with what Bill Self runs. That would be my one concern with them. And then with Duke, it's like, do they have a 5-man that you trust? Can you play Filipowski at the 5 all season long? And I think you might be able to, but you kind of lose an element of rim protection when you do that. But either way, here's my biggest issue with heading into the 2023-24 season with both of these teams is that they already put out the schedule for the Champions Classic. Duke is playing Michigan State. Kansas is playing Kentucky. Like, we need to fix this. This is a problem, fellas. We have the two best teams in college basketball that are going to be in the same city on the same night, playing on the same court, and they're not going to be playing each other. What are we doing here? What is the point of having the Champions Classic if we can't get the two best teams in America to play each other? What is the problem? Who do I need to talk to, Fanta? Who do I need to get on the phone with, T.O.? What can we do to fix this?
I don't know these people.
This is an injustice. This is an injustice to the sport of college basketball.
Okay, well, hold on a minute. I respect the rant, but come on now. Michigan State could be argued as 3. They could be argued as 3 or 4 in the country. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah, but they're not number 1 or 2. There's no one that's going to be arguing they're 1 or 2.
Is there? But there's voters out there, guys, right? Like, I want to get.
There's a lot of dumb people out there with an AP vote. You're right.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You're right.
I'm just going to say, T.O., you and I, like, we've talked about this, Rob. We've talked about this. Don't you think there's a guy out there that, and he might just be one, but there's got to be a couple, that they see Zach Edey come back to Purdue, and they're like, yep, number 1 or number 2 in the book for me. I'm telling you, they exist.
Mm-hmm. Somebody will. Is that breaking news, Fanta? Zach Edey's already announced he's coming back?
No, it's not breaking news, but for all intents. But we'll get to that. But I do think that, you know what the other thing about Kansas is? By virtue of who they are with Timberlake, all right? Because he's going to be counted on to be their perimeter shot maker. Timberlake at Towson, he was the ball handler. He was the shot creator off the dribble. He was he did so much for them. And I'm not suggesting that he's not going to flourish at Kansas. But Dickinson, so much of what Michigan did, everything about him, because why not? Of course it's going to be about him. I'm always fascinated to see, and this is where Bill Self's so great at what he does, how a bunch of guys that were the best player on their team now come together for a group that systematically will play a terrific offensive style, how the ball pops between players who typically haven't popped the ball around because the offense is centered on them.
I would argue a little bit against that with Timberlake because Cam Holden had that ball in his hands a lot.
Yeah.
And then they also featured Thompson quite a bit at the 5. So he's used to playing off the ball some. And a lot of the points, at least early in the season, coming off screens, movement, some of those things, like his ability to elevate and stop on a dime. I think he's a perfect fit for there. And I understand what you're saying, but I think the way he was able to generate points before Christmas, at least that's when I focused on him the most, right? Because I didn't have a Towson game after Christmas, but it was like the way he was able to generate points, have his lower body strength. He's a good enough athlete. Like I think he's a perfect fit at Kansas for what they have, and he's played off of people before.
Do you worry about like the element of Dickinson touches versus how Kansas plays with pace? Did any part of that say, oh, no,
not for me at all. Because I think I think Bill Self is good enough that he can change what he does to kind of tailor it to the pieces that he has. And if he's going to have Hunter Dickinson, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that dude's smart enough to figure out, like, hey, you know what we should do? We should run some of that shit where we get our big guys to seal and get big guys post touches. You know how we got David McCormick to go for 23 and 12 in the national title game? Like, maybe we should run some of that stuff for the two-time All-American, the greatest transfer in the history of transfers.
I also like the lineup too, because if you want to play fast and have a rim runner, KJ Adams can fly.
Yeah, you can mix it up. You can go small. And I would not be surprised.
Like, can. Yes.
But say if you wanted KJ and Hunter at the same time, because KJ runs so well and is such a good athlete, you could have him run the floor. Hunter can make some decisions out on the perimeter. He could be your trail guy, and then you could run some backside action to find ways to get him the ball.
Are you looking forward to those Hunter Dickinson, KJ Adams 4 or 5 pick and rolls? Hunter Dickinson coming off throwing lobs to KJ Adams. How about that, T.O.? How about that, T.O.?
Little something different. Little something different. That's where the NBA is going. 5-1 ball screens.
Yep.
Yeah.
5-4 ball screens.
That's actually how Bill Self was able to get Hunter Dickinson's commitment. Is Hunter's actually going to be playing point guard for Kansas next year?
Yeah, that and 999,000 other reasons.
Yeah, there you go. Real quick on Duke. Last thing, T.O. You're the ACC guy. What's your biggest concern with them? Right? Because I think at this point it's very hard to argue that they should be preseason number one without saying you buy into Tyrese Proctor and Kyle Filipowski both being like top 10 players in college basketball next year. What is your if there's a concern that you have with them, what is it?
You know what? Are they going to be able to shoot it consistently enough? Proctor was good at times. He was bad at times. Roach can put it on the deck, but he's much more geared as a 2. I think the point of them figuring it out is a huge thing. They won 10 out of their last 11. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a Duke team that found their rhythm as of late, but it also coincided with the fact that Derek Lively was starting to get more minutes and be comfortable, especially on the defensive end. Who's going to be your rim protector, your high-level rim protector? Sean Stewart's a great athlete. Not a good athlete. He's a great athlete. He's not 7 feet tall. So, like, where's your rim protection coming from? And regardless of what a lot of people think, like, there's a lot of ways to protect the rim. One is taking charges. The other is blocking shots. I think blocking shots, there's something to be said there, because it puts that seed of doubt in people's mind whenever they do drive to the hole. They relied a lot on Derek Lively on the defensive end. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Can they shoot the ball? You know, TJ Power is a really, really good shooter, and I think he's going to be a 21-year-old freshman. 22. He's not, but he's old, is my point. They're going to have some more shooting this year, and I think with Proctor coming back, I think he's going to shoot the ball better. Who's going to be that rim protector is a big question mark. But guys, they had a kid kind of lurking in the shadows last year, trying to figure it out. Christian Reeves, a 7'1" kid that committed to them late, and I'm not sure if he did red shirt or didn't get a red shirt or did get a red shirt. But this is a guy with big time length and good athleticism. Is he going to be a guy that can step up and fill that role? To be determined, but I think rim protection is a huge thing for Duke.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I also think that we just, the fact that we could be sitting here right now talking about why Kyle Filipowski and Tyrese Proctor could be top 20 picks in the NBA draft, and they're both going to be at Cameron Indoor Stadium come November. That's scary. If those guys continue on the trajectory they've been on. And not to mention Roach. I mean, in a close game late, Jeremy Roach is that dude.
Yeah. I think they have the lineup build that you really want when it comes to college basketball in 2023, right? Like, you have 2 guys that can both be initiators at the point. You have a couple shooters around them. You have a guy in Filipowski you could throw it to in the middle. I think they want, if they can add Ernest Ude out of the transfer portal, and I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen. I would be interested to see how many people go on their visit to a school as transfers and then like a week later still haven't committed and then still end up back at that program. So we'll see what ends up happening there.
Can I a small rant, not a huge one, dude. Wearing the jerseys of other schools that you're not committing to, I think is really weird. Like,
what do you mean?
Like, I just remember getting my Clemson jersey. They didn't used to do that. it was such a privilege to have the jersey with your name on it and to take pictures with that Clemson jersey. Like picture day was a huge deal. Now everybody goes on their visit and they have a photo shoot with their jersey on and all that stuff. Is it not a privilege to put on a jersey of like a Duke? Does that make sense? Like,
You think it would be?
yeah, you
Considering
think
how
it
much,
would be,
how,
but
how often Coach K was
what
like,
school is finally going to say like, no, you're not taking pictures in this jersey until you commit here.
if Duke's not going to do it, no one's not going to do it.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's strange. I just think that's strange. Like, and then say a kid takes a picture in a Duke jersey and he goes to North Carolina. It's like, I just think it's so weird.
You got to make the
I
blow
think
up of
that's
that
a
and hold it in
weird
the
thing
crowd.
that we're doing because it's such a privilege to be able to have that jersey, and then people are just taking pictures in them. I think it's strange.
Yeah.
I think it's strange, but I know that's not an important topic, but I just think that's a weird thing.